Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Tuesday live feed. I know I always put a comment now in the comments just to make sure it's working. So, yes, there's my welcome to everyone. Um, and Ken, thank you again for being here from Central Illinois. I bet your weather's a bit colder than what we've got here in California. So, let us know where you're from, watching from. It's always fun to just kind of see where everybody's watching. I know that there's people across the United States. So, and if you're watching on the replay, welcome. I really appreciate you being here. So, today we're talking about negative feedback. Who's received negative feedback in the past? I have, definitely, and it's not fun at all. This is part of my Writer Challenge series. This is part two, and this is going to go on for another couple of times at least. But I was thinking this, Ken says, just a little. We had a dust oh, the cold, okay, we had a dusting of the white stuff early this morning. Awesome. Well, maybe not awesome for you. I know for us it'd be very awesome. It'd probably shut the whole town down and nobody'd go anywhere. Like when we had 6 inches a few, well, 20 something years ago, everything shut down. Nobody went anywhere because, we're not prepared for snow here. Anyway, so dealing with negative feedback, it's no fun. It's never fun when somebody uh, doesn't like what you've poured your heart and soul into. And it's okay. It's okay that people don't necessarily like it. It's okay that people have other opinions, but this is kind of like how to deal with it. So, one thing to remember is that negative feedback can come from two different places. I'm going to say two specific places. One is from people you know. So that's more personal. That's the personal negative feedback. Ken says, I have recently, it was a wake-up call. I was able to learn from it and take away from the positive. That's great. And that's the way it should be. We should, look at it as a learning experience, but sometimes it hurts. A lot of times it hurts. So there's the personal feedback and then there's the impersonal feedback. We'll be talking about that. That's more like what people might write about your book on Goodreads or Amazon or one of those places where you might not know the person and they might not even use their real name and they might say something really scalding. So, um, let's first talk about the personal feedback, the first personal feedback that's negative. And I think I've mentioned this before. I'd written a 22-page short story and I gave it to my critique group. And when they gave it back to me, the only thing they could say was, the first 2 pages were awesome. And then I knew the other shoe was going to drop. And, of course, the other 20 pages were terrible. And I knew I had to redo them. And since we'd been a critique group for a very long time, I was okay with that. I mean, it still stung a little bit because I thought I'd done a good job, but coming from a group that we'd been together for probably 6 or 7 years, I'll take that feedback. I'll trust them. But what about if you give your chapters or your book, a a proof copy to beta readers, and you say, I need feedback on this, and they come back and tell you, ooh, um, not good. You had a problem here, 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 and here. And that's not what we really want to hear. I mean, it's okay because we've asked for their opinion, but whether you give it to one writing friend, a writing group, a personal friend, a group of writers, people are going to have different opinions. And that's why we do give our work out because we need these opinions. But let's talk about how we can deal with them. So, if you give your chapters to someone and they say, let me read them, one of the best practices is if you're asking for specific feedback. So let's say you give a chapter out to somebody and you say, I need feedback on the dialogue, just the dialogue this time. Don't go hog wild and don't, go on everything. I just need dialogue feedback. And then they know what to focus on. Or if you need character development, or if you need setting the scene or description. Sometimes it's easier for someone if you just ask for the specific dialogue. Ask for the specific feedback. The other thing is ask them also to point out the things that they liked, because a lot of times it's really easy for us to get chapters from somebody and then point out all the things like, okay, there was a mistake here, you did this, you did that, the dialogue wasn't um, realistic. Ken says, I learned a lot from a local writers group. They were fair but firm. Yes, fair but firm is important. In our critique groups, we always emphasize, what we do is we always talk about the positives. We talk about the things that we like first, and we talk about suggestions. In other words, we're not putting our writing voice into their work. We're just making suggestions. Like, I think maybe the dialogue could have gone this way, or maybe this character didn't seem like they would have done this or something like that. But we always talk about the positives first. And a lot of times, you will be asking for very specific feedback, depending on what part you are in the story. I mean, if you've been writing this one chapter over and over and over again, you might be asking for different parts of feedback. The challenge is that when you get feedback like this and they don't tell you why, they just give it to you and say, it stinks, it wasn't right, it wasn't realistic or something. It hurts and it can sting and it can make you question yourself as a writer, and that's a bad thing. It's a bad thing when you think you've done a good job, and it's not ever perfect. I mean, I don't care. I've even read where, like, Stephen King and a lot of other people like that will look back at old books they've done and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I would rewrite the whole thing right now." And so a book is never perfect, but at least you're hoping that it kinda meets somewhat of a criteria of a book, of a story, of a likable character, something like that. So the whole thing is you can't take it personally. I mean, even though, yes, it's our work, it's from our heart and soul, we've worked on it for days, months, years even. Try not to take it personally. Try to step back, take a deep breath, smile, um, and just kind of like, hey, I see that's Derek. You didn't show up, but I've got my phone on. So anyway, hi, it's good to see you, Derek, or good to know that you're here. Um, Derek and I actually we went to the same college together online, so we've known each other for quite a while, and we all experienced our own kind of feedback from professors. And man, I had a professor in one of my writing classes that was so cruel. She almost made me stop writing. It was a romance writing class, and she gave me feedback that was just horrendous. And actually, if you looked at her ratings on Rate My Professor, she had terrible, horrible ratings. Every student said that she was just awful. And it's sad too, because when someone digs that deep and tells you that you've totally missed everything, it really does make you question yourself. So anyway, so don't let someone else's opinions make you question your writing. You were called to write. You've got this thing in you that you have to write. So don't let someone else ruin your dream. Don't let someone else take that dream away from you, because it's really important to continue. You might need to up up your craft, you might need to get some help somewhere, but don't quit. It just because you have some bad dialogue and bad description. I mean, I've had really bad description and really bad dialogue, and you learn little by little. The more you write, the more you read, the better you get, and the more critiques you get, the better you get too. And remember, those are just opinions. There's people that have different opinions. You could have 6 people read the same kind of writing, and they're all gonna have completely different opinions. So, um, I'm looking at my notes so I don't forget what I was gonna say. The other thing is, okay, so there's impersonal feedback. So does anybody have before we get to impersonal feedback, does anybody wanna offer comments about either how negative feedback has affected you, or what you've done to soften the blow a little bit? We're about, there's probably about a 15-second delay. So I know when I ask a question, it takes a while for everybody to answer it, but I'll keep going. Um, the other kind of feedback that is tough, but it's not as tough, but sometimes it still stings, is the feedback that we get when we actually post, when we upload a book or whatnot, and it's on Amazon, it's on Goodreads or wherever, and then we have anybody can make a comment. Ken says, the negative made me more determined to write and tell my story. Good for you. Good for you. I know when I was first writing, the feedback was tough. Especially when I thought I had an amazing story, which when I look at it now, it's like, oh my gosh, that was really bad. But after writing for 10 years, you get a little bit better. So the impersonal feedback. There's a story of someone I know. He spoke at one of our writers' conferences, and he published a book. Now, get this, he's a New York Times bestselling author. He's a screenwriter. And he said on Amazon, and I'm paraphrasing completely, so I'm going to get this wrong a little bit, but one of the reviews on Amazon said, this book was so bad, it should be set on fire and thrown in a dumpster. And I always laughed at that. I thought, that is probably some of the funniest. I mean, it's not really funny, but it was bad. I recall some hard criticism from professors during the writing program, maybe most fair, but some harshness. I'm still writing and teaching creative writing. Oh, that's great. Yes, and you're actually teaching at our alma mater, so that's amazing. Yeah, some of them. Now, there were some that were very fair and harsh, but then there were some that were downright mean, and this is one that I had in that one class. I mean, she was downright mean, just terrible. And those are the ones that, I don't know. I don't think they should be professors, in my opinion. She had nothing nice to say about anybody's work, so it wasn't just me. It was a lot of people. So anyway, yes, this friend got it should be set on fire and thrown in a dumpster on Amazon. And I guess they gave it 1 star, but said if they could give it less than 1 star, they would. So, we all laughed, but we kind of cringed too, because it's like, you just, you feel bad. And I know that's Laquita because she always has the yellow hearts. It's great to see you. You feel bad. You feel bad when somebody puts a horrible review. And the thing is as authors, Ken says, oops, sorry, it didn't show up. I think the thing that bothered me was I wouldn't write that way. Yes. And Ken says, hello to Laquita. Yeah, I agree with you, Ken. I agree. And the thing is so we're told, as authors, we're told not to read. Yeah, you know what? Sometimes it just does that. So, yeah, what you can do is if you're making a comment, you can always just put your name in parentheses. So I know, because I know a couple of you aren't showing up. StreamYard technology, love it, hate it, right? So anyway, let me go back to what I was saying. Oh, we're not supposed to look at the reviews on Amazon, but I have to admit, I do. I look at them, and then when there's a really good one, I'm excited, and if there's one that's like a 2-star, I'm like deflated, and I shouldn't be that way, because you know why? Because everything we write doesn't resonate with everyone. And so it's like, why should we care what someone says that we don't even know? To me, if it's somebody I know, it hurts a little bit more. But if it's somebody I don't know, well, to each their own. So the thing is, we can be sensitive to negative feedback, and it's okay because we're human, but are we going to let it take us out? Are we going to let it take us out of what we love most? And Derek, you said that you're still teaching. What kind of feedback? What kind of feedback do you give your students? I imagine you're teaching either English or creative writing, but how do you give feedback to your students? Do you? I'm sure it's fair, of course. Do you point out the good, or do you just point out the negative? How do you actually approach it? And are they grad students? Are you in the teaching in the grad program, or are you teaching in the, undergrad program? That's another thing, because I know as grad students, we needed a little bit harsher criticism than the undergrads. The very first creative writing course that we did our story, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, I've never had shown this to anyone ever," and that's kind of a scary thing. So the thing and with a professor too, I mean, not talking about the one that was very unfair. Um, we do need to listen. I remember one professor that gave me the harshest feedback was the one that helped me the most, because I needed that kind of harsh feedback. But they also softened it a little bit by showing me all the things that I'd done right. And I think that's the most important thing. So, does anybody else have any comments? I'm waiting. Ooh, eerie silence, right? So if you are writing, do you show it to people? That's another question. When do you show it to people? Do you show it to them after you've written the first draft? Do you wait until you've done a second or third draft? For me, with my critique group, they usually get the raw one. They usually get it right out of the bat. Um, and so they see my worst work, but they also make me the best writer too, because they point out things that, my thing is, my favorite mistake is to say the same word or a derivative of the word several times in one paragraph. Like, she reached for the thing because she couldn't reach it, blah blah blah. So I just love to repeat words, because they're good words, and I want to say them a whole bunch of times. But, the other thing is if you're not sure, then write it a couple times. But if you're also not sure if you're doing it right or wrong, you should show it to somebody as soon as possible, because then they can help you. Okay, so I usually wait until after a second draft, honestly. Then I'll join a critique circle or have others critique it individually. Yes. Second drafts are good. I mean, if you've been writing for a while, and I know Derek's been writing for a while, you've got at least one book out, at least. And so, and teaching too, you know a little bit more of what you're doing. So for you, yes, a second draft, you'll want to have people look at it. Ken says, after I had such harsh feedback, I rewrote the scene and showed it to another author, and she liked it except for the first words. She died and gone to heaven. Yeah, it's good to have more than one person look at it. In our critique group, we had 5 people for a while, and it was nice because there's 5 different opinions. Well, 4 different opinions, because I wouldn't, give my own opinion. Um, but then you look at the fact that there are a lot of different opinions, and pick and choose your critique people wisely. Pick people that are going to give you feedback that's helpful. Not just, "I didn't like it," or, "I don't think this works." Well, why doesn't it work? Tell us why it doesn't work. But the biggest thing is just realizing that most people are trying to help. People are trying to have you help you become a better writer. And I think yourself, after you've written for a while, I think you kinda know, like Derek said, you wait till after the second draft, um, or have people critique it individually, and I'm sure you pick and choose who you have people critique. So, does anybody else have any other questions? Because that's about all I have for right now. Looking to make sure I didn't miss anything, and I guess not. So Thank you everyone for being here. If you have other questions after we're done, make sure you post them in the comments and I'll go back and listen, or, I'll listen to them. I'll go back and read them, and I'll make comments too. And anytime you have a really good idea for another live stream, let me know. I want to do live streams that make a difference to you. I want to do live streams that help you in your writing. Like I said, I have a few more in this writer challenge series that I want to go through. But, if you have something specific you want me to talk about, I'd love to know. I'd love to know your thoughts, what's bugging you, what one thing is stopping you for your writing, what's holding you back, you know, let's make the rest of this year in 2023 a great year for writing. Ken says, thank you. You're welcome, Ken. I appreciate you being here. Anyway, everyone take care and I'll see you again next week.